It's exciting because from all of the conference, I think this is the one I learned the most from.
I didn't know that the community was this big. I'm learning a lot. I need to be involved with DBT, like a lot more.
The vibe at the conference is amazing. This is my 4th year here, and I keep coming back because I love all the people that are here, and I love how amazing this event is.
Very exciting stuff with DBT Fusion, kind of ready to get in there and bring it back to the rest of the team.
You can see AI in action right from the registration booth all the way up until our keynote and the new features that are getting added.
It is my first time, but definitely not the last time. It's been incredible. I've met so many amazing people, learned so much about DBT Fusion, and just taking a lot of notes to see what we are going to do next.
I think the DBT community is way ahead of the curve in something that is incredibly true right now, which is that being in person and sharing ideas is how things are getting done. It's hard to imagine a better community and a better place to live.
Hey everyone, welcome in. Please let us know in the chat where you're joining us from today. I'm Leah Houston. I'm a senior campaign specialist here at DBT Labs. I'm joining you from Portland, Oregon, and I'm very excited to kick off today's event, Speed, Simplicity, Cost Savings, Experience the DBT Fusion Engine. Yeah, let's go. Alrighty, some housekeeping things. We've got a Q&A tab. Please use that Q&A tab to ask all of your questions. That way a DBT product expert can easily find your question and answer it for you. We also have the chat tab. That's where you've been letting us know where you're joining us from. So please continue to use that today and have some fun with us. Etiquette, please be kind to your fellow attendees and presenters. We want you to ask the tough questions. We want you to share your feedback. We're glad you're here, but let's keep it respectful and inclusive. Recording, yes, we will be sending out today's recording within 24 hours after this event wraps, so be on the lookout for that in your email inbox. And then lastly, we will be sending out a survey at the end of today's webinar. We'd really appreciate it if you took that survey. We'd love to know your feedback and how to improve these webinars for y'all in the future. Alrighty, today's agenda. So first we're gonna talk about why the DBT Fusion Engine represents a bridge to the future of data and AI. Then we're gonna go into reimagining the developer experience from local to platform. And then next we're gonna go to the demo. You'll see Fusion on Studio IDE, DBT Compare, and other new developer experiences in action. A little bit of skirt. Then we'll do a customer spotlight, so you'll hear insights from a Fusion beta customer. And then lastly, we've got some next steps for y'all on your DBT Fusion Engine journey. So these are today's presenters. With that, I am going to pass things over to our first presenter, Tristan Handy, the founder and CEO of DBT Labs. So take it away, Tristan.
Thanks, Leah. Hey, folks. If you missed us in Vegas, it was a time. It was a great time. The biggest coalesce ever and a ton of energy in the room. And I want to extend a special kudos to everyone on the dance floor on Wednesday night. I am impressed you folks still brought it after an intense 2 days. I spent my week in conversation with partners, users, customers, and also a bunch of time in person with our team, which I don't get to do enough of these days. I wanted to share a couple big takeaways that I had. First one, there are just so many humans out there who are still just now having their first experience of DBT and the community. DBT's been around for almost a decade, and I have a hard time even imagining my life as a data practitioner without it. But there are still folks who are discovering DBT and having it change their lives every single day. They show up in our community. They show up at Coalesce. They bring new energy. They need our collective help as well to get up and running. I appreciate everyone here in this community for paying it forwards, for giving back to that next generation of DBT newbies. Second thing, the biggest hot topic in my conversations with folks at the event was how to bring to life the talk with my data AI use case. It's just so obviously a good idea. And there are folks throughout the community who are experimenting and getting this off the ground. I'm hearing this from fast-growing digital natives to like the very largest enterprise in the world. They're running experiments. They're seeing what works. And I've even gotten the opportunity to see some usage data from some of these experiments live. This is real. This is really taking off, and I'm excited for it. I think it's a fantastic way for DBT and analytics engineers to surface more of the value of the things that we've been creating for a long time now throughout their companies. Last thing, the single release that generated the most excitement in the conversations that I had was state-aware orchestration, and some of the performance numbers that we shared around it. Now, I'm not going to go into depth on this now because I think we're going to be sharing more about this later. You can certainly already find information about it online, but the data points that we shared on early adoption and performance really seemed to strike a nerve with the entire community and generated a bunch of excitement, which was awesome to see. Of course, we started the week with some pretty big news. We're merging with Fivetran. And so there is a ton to say about this, and we've shared a lot publicly already. If you are a user or a customer today of either product, I'd highly recommend that you check out the public announcements. The very short version that I want to make sure that you've heard me say is that your experience of both products is going to continue as is. DBT is still going to be DBT, and Fivetran will still be Fivetran. No disruptions. As a part of this announcement, though, we shared our thinking, from my perspective, our clearest thinking to date on the topic of open data infrastructure. Open data infrastructure is how we are describing pluggable data infrastructure that's integrated and straightforward to deploy, but that also preserves user choice on analytical compute via open standards. Our belief is that in the AI world that we're all moving towards, there is no single best analytical compute engine, and data infrastructure will have to be built with that as a foundational assumption. I wrote a lot more about this in my post, What is Open Data Infrastructure? And I'd love to hear your thoughts. At DBT Labs, we've been in a cross-platform open future for a bunch of years now. And our biggest investment ever in this direction is the DBT Fusion engine. In case you missed our big announcement back in May, this year we rewrote DBT from the ground up. The new engine, called Fusion, is absolutely central to the future of DBT. A bunch of you have tried it out, and many of you are actively using it in production today. If you've already moved to Fusion, hell yeah. But the benefits you're seeing so far are just the absolute beginning. So I want to spend a few minutes talking about what the DBT Fusion engine is and why it represents such an exciting step forwards. First, it's fast. 30x faster parse times than DBT Core. The first time you use it, you will feel it. Its DevX is far better than anything DBT's offered before, making you dramatically more productive. Developing with Fusion is just a lot of fun. It helps save you money. Now, I don't want to spoil the later parts of the presentation, but based on early testing, Fusion can drive very serious efficiency. It can track and govern PII across your entire organization, whether that's 10, 100, or 1,000,000 tables. It's perfect for the lakehouse architecture. It abstracts the SQL you write from any one dialect, allowing your data workloads to be just as platform independent as your data storage. Fusion plus Iceberg is the ideal recipe for an open data infrastructure. Finally, Fusion is the perfect combination to AI and agents. If you can't tell, I really am excited about Fusion, and I really believe it is the future for DBT. But I want to also acknowledge that change is hard. Many of you in the DBT community have built a big chunk of your careers around DBT. You're certified. You've used it in multiple jobs. You've likely spent thousands of hours writing DBT models, writing CTEs and ref statements. You've attended meetups. You've hosted meetups. You've even declined job offers if the company that recruited you didn't use DBT. It's this passion that's made DBT and this community what we are today. And now DBT is changing? I want to go on record with a few really straightforward statements as we navigate this change together. First, DBT Core just couldn't go where Fusion is headed. Technically, it's a 9-year-old code base. And back in 2016, we had no way of anticipating the world that we now live in. Core is an awesome workflow innovation, and it's why we're all here in the first place. But I have zero interest in getting stuck in the past. Second, DBT Core isn't going away. If you use Core today, it's not going anywhere. We are continuing to invest in it indefinitely. And while I believe the benefits of Fusion speak for themselves, I also recognize that upgrades take time. When you upgrade is totally your choice. Third, your existing DBT code will largely just work with Fusion. Just like any major version upgrade, there will be a few areas that require code changes. And we've built a bunch of automated tooling to help with most of this. But we aim to make Fusion as conformant as possible with the literally billions of lines of DBT code out there in the universe. Fusion is the DBT you know and love, just better. Fourth, Fusion doesn't require you to pay us anything. Just like DBT Core, Fusion can be used locally on the CLI for free. Full stop. Fifth, Fusion is the bridge to the future. The future of the data ecosystem and for data practitioners is changing. And the two forces that are changing it are open standards and AI. Fusion is a huge part of the answer to how DBT and the DBT community tie into this new world. And now, to go deeper, I'd like to introduce Elias DeFaria, co-founder of SDF and product lead for the DBT Fusion engine. Elias?
Hello, folks. Thanks a lot, Tristan, for the intro. My name is Elias. I lead our product efforts for the DBT Fusion engine, and I am very excited to be here today to talk about that with you all. But first, we're going to talk about where I was last week physically on this earth, and that is Las Vegas, Nevada. Not sure I want to go back for a little while, but that's okay because last week was totally awesome. And last week we had our Coalesce conference there. And for those of you who couldn't tune in online or in person, I'm going to take a minute here and just talk about my experience because it was kind of crazy. It was genuinely sort of cathartic because a year ago, I was at the conference as an attendee. I was sitting in the audience as a co-founder of a next-gen data transformation company, SDF Labs. And I was watching Tristan, I was watching others on stage. I was inspired by what I saw there. And then a year later, just last week, I was on that same stage. Crazy life we live. You know what I mean? You have those moments. You're like, wow, gosh, I cannot believe this is happening. And that was one of those moments. But zooming out past me, we announced some pretty awesome stuff at this conference. For example, we announced that we are merging with Fivetran. That's a big deal. Yeah, that's going to have some ripple impacts on this industry. Holy smokes. But I really believe in this resulting company. I really believe in the new approach that we're discussing to data management, which is this open data infrastructure idea. Um, and the sort of idea is that we have this interoperable layer of compute, right? That you can plug in the compute that you want there and have the abstracted logic and ingestion above it all, right? I really think it's a milestone moment for the industry. I think we're better together, and I think it's built for the evolving data landscape, so to speak. And the DBT Fusion engine plays a very significant role in that, which is what I spend every day thinking about. And speaking of Fusion, at Coalesce, we also announced Fusion and state-of-the-art orchestration, the two things I'll talk a lot about today. They are now in preview in the DBT platform for eligible projects. So we're expanding the customers of the DBT platform that can get access to this, and specifically to the state-of-the-art orchestration piece, which is a big deal. So we're going to talk a lot about that today. DBT Fusion engine, state-of-the-art orchestration. And I'd say we just dive in. So let's start. Little history lesson here. I joined this company 10 months ago because the company that I co-founded, SDF, was acquired by DBT. And my team and I here at DBT have spent the 10 months building the DBT Fusion engine. And this is a full rewrite of DBT core in Rust. And it's injected with the technology we developed at SDF, which is a SQL compiler and state system, right? So this is cool stuff. This is kind of sweet. But what does it do? Why is it different? What new primitives does it introduce? Well, first thing is it's a compiler, right? So that means it deeply comprehends SQL syntax and semantics across data platforms. Metadata, SQL validation, intelligent state management, all of that stuff starts with being able to understand the fundamental language that your data pipelines are written in. And I will sort of prove this to you in a bit with descriptions of features as well as a very cool demo. And DBT Core, by comparison, it defers the SQL understanding to the warehouse, right? And we now bring that locally and natively in the engine, right? And every time you have to incur that SQL understanding in the warehouse, you incur costs, you have delays during development. I'll talk about all this more later. But this is a new, very fundamental primitive in this new engine. The second part is that it's built on Rust, right? We see 30x faster parse time improvement for every command that DBT runs, because every command first has to parse the project, and then it can do whatever it's trying to do, be it build the project or run a sub-selection of models or run tests, right? Parse is the beginning, and so everything is snappier in this thing. And then lastly, Fusion is stateful, right? And state management in this context means Fusion now has the ability to optimize its runtime based on the history of what has been run before and its understanding of the state of the warehouse, right? And this enables it to avoid unnecessary work and many other really cool attributes that I'll talk about more in depth in a bit. But this is a lot about the primitives, like what fundamental components it adds to the engine. We should talk more about why it matters to all of you, why it's going to level up your experience. So diving in, I think there's three things to discuss here. The first of which is developer experience, the second, cost optimization, and the last, rich context for AI-ready data. So let's start with my favorite one, the developer experience. This one's my favorite because I was an engineer for a long time and I worked with DBT. I deployed it myself. And so I just love making awesome developer experiences. This one is really, really something because of SQL comprehension, I think fundamentally, right? Like if you look at Python, if you look at JavaScript, any other language, all of them are powered by compilers or interpreters that understand the language itself locally on your laptop. And so to the next slide here, right, you can see the list of all these features: real-time code validation, CTE previews, compare changes, impact analysis. All this stuff comes from being able to understand the language, right? And all of this stuff makes building with DBT just a lot more fun. And I will show this to you in action with a demo later. But moving on, let's talk about deployment. What happens when you deploy Fusion? Not just when you develop with it, but when you deploy Fusion, you get cost optimization, right? The cost of deploying and running your DBT project on a schedule goes down. It's as simple as that. Who doesn't want an optimized deployment, right? But let's talk about specifics. So diving in here to this first one. Here we see a DAG, right? You have source orders, you have source customers as these two sources that the entire DAG is selecting from, right? You'll notice something. Source orders is stale, right? It means it has no new data since the last run. Whereas source customers does have new data. It's considered fresh, right? And so theoretically, if we were to run this again in its current state, staging customers, dim customers, and everything downstream is effectively out of date. It doesn't have new data. So in running this pipeline, we would be getting value out of this execution because those models would run on new data and compute new results. But the models that only depend on source orders, they actually theoretically don't need to be run because there's no new data. The data is stale, right? So they would just be computing the same result unnecessarily. And this is where state-aware orchestration comes in with Fusion deployments. So take a look at that. This is what happens when we actually run this DAG. So you'll see because the source orders is stale, it has no new data, running this DAG with Fusion means staging orders and int orders are completely skipped, right? You can see the label there. It says model reused. And that's because we actually we skip those at execution time, and that is just savings in your pocket. That just means the cost to run this DBT project just went down in this instance, right? And that's, I think, a very compelling thing in itself, right? Just the fact that you can deploy this and run it, say, every 15 minutes, and it will only run the models that need to be updated, right? It actually simplifies orchestration too, because now you don't have to think about, hey, the data's landing at 5:01. I'm going to schedule this job to run at 5:05 once an hour. You just say dbt build at whatever cadence you want, and it only runs the models that are necessary. So I love this simplification, but this is just the beginning of what is possible with state-aware orchestration. We introduced two new configurations that let people take this even further, right? And so we have one of them called updates on here. And so updates on is essentially a configuration that says, for this model, do I want it to update if all upstreams have new data, or if any of the upstreams have new data, or if this specific list has new data, right? So let's get really fine-grained about when to update a model. And then we have a new config build after, and build after enables us to specify freshness SLAs. So I could say, for this model, I only want to build it if there are 4 hours worth of new data, fresh data upstream, right? Or if there's 1 day worth upstream, right? And so you can come in here with these advanced configurations, and you can start to really optimize your runtime, right? And we've seen very compelling results from going the step further. And this is sort of a version of declarative scheduling. Don't tell anyone I said that, because the orchestration companies love to harp on it. Anyways, moving on, we've gone even further though. SAO doesn't just look at sort of running and skipping models. It also looks at tests, right? So take this example, right? Imagine you have a model that has a test per column, and you have like 10 tests. Fusion, with its SQL comprehension, can aggregate all of those tests into one query to reduce the testing costs significantly, right? We call this test aggregation. Going even further, Fusion can look at the lineage, the column lineage, and then understand about what actually happens to the column at each stage of the DAG. So for example, in this case, customer ID is selected both in staging customers and dim customers. And for the sake of this diagram, let's imagine in dim customers, it's not transformed at all. It's just copied into dim customers, right? So Fusion will detect this, and it will skip running the test entirely on dim customers, since it would be testing the same value twice. And this is quite cool, right? So this means Fusion is understanding this is just a copied value. There's no transformation that happened there. And therefore, we're actually testing the same value set in both tables. So we can significantly reduce testing cost and runtime as well. But this was a lot of cool technical deep dives and descriptions. Thank you for indulging me as I nerd out. But what is the actual impact on the cost of deploying your DBT project? Well, so the first two things I mentioned around state-aware orchestration drive around, on average, 25%, right? The first 10% is just turning it on. So starting on the left, right, the sources don't have new data. We skip the ones that are selecting from stale models. Awesome. And And then we move on to those advanced configurations, build after and updates on. We found when teams optimize using these configurations, they see an extra 15% of savings on average. But then, last thing here, with that test aggregation and optimized test execution, we had another 4%, which means the average cost reduction of deploying your DBT project with Fusion is 29%. That means it's 29% less expensive to run that project in production. So that's cool. We've got developer experience stuff. We've got deployment stuff that's making it great and cheaper and faster to run. But there's one last thing that Fusion does. Using its SQL comprehension, using many of its new primitives, it can produce metadata that other engines simply cannot. And this can provide very rich context for AI-ready data. So let's think about this. Imagine I wanted an AI to author a model or modify my DBT project, right? And I wanted to sort of co-pilot that. Fusion metadata can provide tooling that enables the AI to produce higher fidelity work. So let's take this example, like an impact analysis scenario, right? If the AI renames the column revenue amount, how does it know which downstreams are impacted? Today, it would have to run that model and all its downstreams and then sort of deduce what happened based on the CLI output. But with Fusion, we can actually directly provide the AI with that metadata and let it know exactly what needs to be changed downstream. And this reduces the cost of actually running the AI that's doing cycles during development. It also just increases the fidelity and ensures that the AI doesn't introduce errors, right? So this is just one example of how Fusion metadata can really enhance the AI-assisted development experience. Cool, folks. But I think that's enough talking. I love to demo things, and that's what I want to do for you all today. So I'm going to share screen now, and I'm going to show a VS Code window, and we're going to take a look at what it's like to develop with DBT Fusion. Okay, so we now have a VS Code window open. I hope you all can see this. And we are going to show what it's like to develop with Fusion locally and the DBT VS Code extension. All right. For those of you that were not at Coalesce last week and did not encounter me demoing this project, Mom's Flower Shop, there's a little bit of lore for you here. At SDF, we had a sample project like DBT's Joffle Shop, and it was this one, Mom's Flower Shop. And we based it off my mom's real flower shop in LA. It's called Florette Studio, and it's a cool thing. So we modeled the data of her small business, and that is this project. So we're going to demo with this today, show what it's like to develop. First thing I'm going to do here is a DBT build. So I like to start with this because I want to emphasize that Fusion can be deployed just like DBT Core. On your own stack at any scale without talking to us, no contracts necessary. I'm doing a build locally on my machine, right? And look at the logs. The logs are great, just like DBT Core's logs. Well, they're different, but they're also great. And we've got things like the duration of how long a model took, and we've got summaries at the bottom there. And these logs were not here 3 months ago. They were not this good 3 months ago. They were a lot worse, and you all told us that very directly. But I want to show a little bit about the actual developer experience here, right? Not just the logs, as much as I'm passionate about them. And I'm going to show that the DBT engine here. So you can see my version is DBT Fusion locally. This is going to work in tandem with our VS Code extension here to actually power the developer experience I'm showing. So starting with a model here, staging website hits. Let's go through some of the basics, right? So for example, I can press this button and I can see the compiled output left to right there in line. Pretty sweet. I can press this button and I can preview the results and see them directly in line. And I love these types of small features that they just keep us in the zone, right? I don't need to now go run this up in Snowsight to see the results of the query and then come back down to my local machine. It's like, let's keep it all in one interface, you know? Smooth developer experience. Awesome. But you've probably seen features like this. Let's show something a little cooler. If I go here and I type show column lineage, I can actually see the column of lineage visualized directly in VS Code for this model, right? And more than just the column lineage, we actually have labels for what happens to the column at each stage of the DAG. So this is for campaign type, and you can see campaign type is being aliased to produce the new column name. That's why Fusion labels this rename, right? But if we go downstream, these campaign type is just selected. It's just copied into these downstream tables. And that's why it's called pass-through here. And then these ones, campaign type is used to produce a column called prev week visits in a downstream model. And that's why we label it a transformation, right? And I like to show this visualization because it illustrates just how much Fusion understands about the SQL it's compiling, right? And earlier I talked about AI and AI metadata. Well, this is like a good visualization that captures just how much metadata we have to expose to AIs during development, as well as us during development, us humans. Yes, still important, us humans. But let's move on, show what it's like to actually develop with VS Code and the Fusion engine. So I've got a metric here called rolling metrics, a model, and it's got a set of chain CTEs, right? Like daily orders, daily revenue, daily active users, and this one, daily 7-day orders. Great. And there's a to-do on this one. It says, Elias, hey, calculate 7-day rolling orders. Okay, I can do that. That means we want to look at for 1 day worth of data, look back 7 days, sum up all the orders in that window, and add a new value in that row, right? Okay, I said it. I said window. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to use a window function. Starting out here, I want to hover over this star, and I can see the columns I'm selecting from upstream, like metric date is a date type, and orders is a number, and I can hover over daily orders to see the actual definition of that CTE right there in line. I can even click daily orders, right? And it will take me to the definition of that CTE in the same file. Or I can click the star, and it will preview kind of right there in line the column definitions and highlight them for me. So all these cool developer ergonomic features are powered by Fusion SQL comprehension. Really, really cool stuff. But let's move on with my transformation. I'm going to select metric date first, and then I'm going to sum our orders over order by metric date. And then we're going to say rows between 6 preceding and current row. Save it, and whoa, look, I got some feedback. I misspelled preceding. Okay, that's an easy one. But critically, in dbt core, I'd have to run this model remotely, potentially incur compute cost, wait for that round trip just to know I misspelled preceding, something so basic, right? So I'll remove the E. We're back in a good state. Nice. That's the developer loop that we want to power. Super quick, super speedy, real-time error feedback. And so I'll do this. I'll alias it to order 7 days, and then I'll say where order 7 days is greater than 0, because I want to filter out rows. I don't like the caps. What's going on with the caps here? There you go. Order 7 days is greater than 0, and I'll save this, and whoa, look, I get new feedback there. Now, this is a more complex error that Fusion has caught in SQL. Specifically, it's saying window function sum appears outside of select, qualify, or order by clauses. This means that Fusion is telling us the where, the filter here, applies before the window function has been evaluated. And this is how query engines do their thing with a query like this. This is their order of operations. And Fusion knows this, and it tells us, and this is a deep error. This is a compiler error that requires a semantic pass, right? And so you can expect Fusion to tell you about all these types of errors instantly and rapidly during development. And so to fix this, we can use the qualify keyword, and we're back in a good state because Fusion knows that qualify is evaluated after the window function has been computed. Very cool. But maybe I want to see the actual data from this CTE. Well, if you don't use Fusion in the VS Code extension today, you probably do something like this. You come down here and you comment out the rest of this stuff, and then you select from daily 7-day orders, right? But now with Fusion, we've introduced a new nice ergonomic utility here, preview CTE. When I click this, Fusion will preview the data that this CTE produces. Look at that right there in line, really nice. And it knows the in CTE lineage, so it runs daily orders, it skips daily revenue and daily active users, and then just previews the output here. That's the power of SQL comprehension, folks. Moving on to this next CTE, combined daily, you can see I have a set of left joins here. I'm going to make a change to these. I am going to remove the left. So save the file, and Fusion compilation says it's okay. So no problems, right? Maybe you don't trust this change. We can come up here and we can build this model. And we're going to build this model. It's going to run the model and all of its tests. And let's see if that succeeds. Great. Looks like it's working. It worked. So we got no problems, right? We can deploy this to production, huh? Yeah? No, no, no. Many of you SQL aficionados out there know this is a very dangerous change, right? This could have real impact on the data that we're not seeing by just building the model or compiling it with Fusion. Um, and a scenario like this is exactly why we introduced a new feature recently. It's coming soon, so we're still alpha testing internally, but it's called Compare Changes, and it's this tab right here. And when I press this compare button, Fusion will run a data diff and compute the exact impact on the data that our changes to this model will have if we deploy it in production. We'll do that during development. Look at that. Boom. It caught some really major stuff, right? Like, for example, 2,184 rows have been removed. That's 99.7% of rows have been removed by just removing that left keyword. Crazy, huh? Little tiny changes like that can have very, very far-reaching impacts on the data. And if I go to each tab like primary keys, right, we actually list out the removed records, precisely which ones. Modified rows will show me the column level impact, right, like showing me which values have actually changed left to right here. And clicking the columns tab shows me which columns were modified and how they were modified. So value change or data type or column position, right? So this is a super powerful feature that goes beyond what compilation or even building the model can check. This is fully shifting data quality left. And I'm very excited. It's coming soon to DBT platform customers using the VS Code extension. Awesome, 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 awesome. I love that feature. Okay, moving on here. Something that I don't feel the demo actually captures at this stage is that compile does not just look at one file at a time. To date, I've been making changes here. You've seen it's shown an error about when I make a stupid mistake here, right? Compile is actually considering the whole project context every time you make a change. And here's a good way to illustrate that. So let's go down here to this campaign type column, right? Let's imagine that we've heard from the marketing department, i.e. my mother, and she wants to rename this column to campaign source. We're done with campaign type, right? So for that, I can do this campaign source. And the minute I save this, many of you know this is probably going to be a breaking change, right? If any dependencies need this column, they're not going to be able to run. And guess what? When I save this file, Fusion immediately highlights red all downstream models that break as a byproduct of this change. Pretty cool. So I go to one of them, you'll see, look at that. There's an error on line 7. No column campaign type found. So it does this impact analysis every time you make a change. You can constantly be confident about your changes. So I'll revert that change. We're back in a good state. Fusion's not highlighting in the red anymore. But maybe I actually do want to rename this column, right? So I can come in here, I can say rename symbol, right? And I'll say campaign source. And when I do it this way, and then press enter, Fusion will rewrite all downstream models to reference the new column name. Like, look at that. Hey, yo, pretty cool, huh? And this even works in complex scenarios where the column is used in a window function, like right here, right? So you can see it's used in this lag over. Fusion even gets it there. It's a really, really powerful feature that helps automate refactoring and all of that. But this impact analysis, it doesn't just stop at model level changes. It also considers config and macro level changes, right? So the best example I can think of for this is imagine you want this project to be compatible with multiple warehouses. Imagine you've got Iceberg storage, right, or another open table format, and you want these models to be executable against Snowflake and Databricks. So today, if I go to my DBT project YAML, this config line 6, I'm using a Snowflake profile, right? So this project was developed for Snowflake. But watch this. If I have a valid Databricks profile configured locally, and I change it to Databricks, when I save this file, Fusion will highlight red any models that are not compatible in Databricks, right? And so look at this case. We have a macro that's generating some SQL here, generate tape spine, and it says no function generator. I can use that utility right here to show you the SQL that's produced from this macro left to right. That's pretty cool in itself. But what we're calling out here is line 20. We use this generator function. And this is a table function that's only available in Snowflake. It's not available in Databricks. And Fusion tells you at compile time, hey, this model is not going to be compatible with Databricks. And so if you want to maintain vendor flexibility, right? If you want to ensure that your pipelines can run on multiple warehouses or different backends, Fusion is a very, very efficient and simple way to do that. And imagine also like a migration scenario, telling an agent or something, hey, I want you to migrate this whole pipeline from one warehouse to another. And letting it reference this compile time feedback makes that so much faster and higher fidelity. Well, that's all I got from you from the demo. Um, and next, we're going to move on to something much more exciting. Okay, folks. Wow, that was a lot of fun. That's one I love doing that demo. That's a great time. And now I get to do something I think even more fun, which is talk to a real Fusion user. Everybody, please join me in welcoming Sonja Strempel from DPG Media. Welcome, Sonia. How's it going?
Hi, Elias. Doing pretty well. I hope you too.
Nice, nice, nice. And where are you calling from?
I'm calling from the Netherlands. I'm based in Amsterdam. Well, I'm originally actually from Germany, but I'm living in the Netherlands now for a little bit
Nice.
over 8 years. Well,
Nice,
almost.
nice. I'm in Seattle right now. It's far away. Yeah, yeah. Well, cool. Thank you for joining us. Um, let's see. We met first at that conference in Stockholm where I first demoed Fusion, and you were really excited about what you saw. And so maybe I want to fast forward back way before that to your full journey with DBT before you got to that moment of seeing Fusion and being like, this is pretty cool. How and when did you start using DBT?
Maybe I should introduce myself quickly first.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
So yeah, already said I'm originally from Germany, but I'm living in the Netherlands, and I'm now working as an analytics engineer at DPG Media. That is a media company in Belgium and the Netherlands with more than 80 brands. So for people living in the Netherlands or Belgium, there is a high chance they interacted with one of our products, which range from newspapers to radio shows. And yeah, I'm now working as an analytics engineer for a little bit over 2 years.
Cool. And was joining DPG, was that your first interaction with DBT, or did you use it before then?
Well, I would say yes and no. So I think like the first interaction I had with DBT was around 3.5 or 4 years ago. I still remember that I was working as a data analyst back then. And as many other data analysts, I was super frustrated with data quality issues, a lot of repetitive data preparation tasks, and a lot of ad hoc questions. And back then I was thinking, how can we improve this? What can be done? How can we improve our pipeline to make it more resilient, more robust, and also especially more scalable? With the ideal picture in mind that stakeholders can just, easily find the information they need by themselves, without asking a lot of questions to us as analysts. And then I was searching, and the first thing coming up was, surprise, DBT.
Yeah.
And then I just learned as much as I could, and did some of the courses, read some papers, and yeah, that was my first interaction. It still took a time though before I actually could use it because my
Yeah.
prior company decided to experiment with Dataform, which is
Okay.
similar but also
Yeah,
very
yeah, yeah,
different. And yeah, then 2 years ago, I was starting to use DBT, first DBT Core in VS Code, and now we're using DBT Cloud.
Nice. And tell me about that deployment at DPG Media. You use DBT actively in your everyday work. How is it deployed? Yeah.
Yes, definitely using it very actively every day. So as I already said, we use DBT Cloud. We transitioned from DBT Core to DBT Cloud, I think a little bit over a year ago, if I recall correctly.
Hmm.
And we have a lot of data teams. So we have data teams on IT side, but also on business side. And
Hmm.
basically every data team has their own DBT project and also their own Git repository, and the entire infrastructure. So basically everything from project creation, repository creation, basically the entire project provisioning, and also the DBT version updates. That is all centrally managed in Terraform by our data platform team. So we make use of the DBT Cloud Terraform provider.
Oh,
So that
cool.
makes it super easy to onboard new
Yeah.
people. Yeah, not a lot of manual steps needed.
Yeah.
And yeah, all the CI processes and the build checks, that's also handled by our data platform team. And there we are making use of the state management of
Mm.
DBT Cloud. So we only run for pull request models that actually changed. And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so that actually reduces a lot of time and yeah, saves us a lot of trouble. And I
Cool.
would say the other thing that's important for our setup that is we use Airflow as an orchestration tool.
Okay.
So yeah, we do that because we do have a lot of jobs that require ingestion steps before, but we do run the actual DBT executions in DBT Cloud.
Yeah, so
Because
you call out to DBT
yeah,
Cloud via the Jobs
exactly.
API. Great.
Yeah.
From
Yeah,
our
so we use Airflow providers and then that's triggered.
Makes a lot of sense. Cool. And so now we have a little bit of history leading up to when we first met in Stockholm. Um, I remember you approached me at the booth after I'd given that demo, and you were like, "Hey, that thing's pretty
Yes.
cool." And you asked whether Fusion was right for DPG, right? So what were your initial thoughts about it? What was interesting about Fusion to you?
Yeah, I actually still remember that. That was indeed at the Data Innovation Summit in
Yeah.
Stockholm. And I think that was shortly after DBT announced that Fusion is coming up.
Hmm.
And I remember you gave a talk on it.
Hmm.
And I think my first thought was, this is pretty cool. I think that could really solve a lot of the problems that I have on a daily basis. And I think my second thought was probably, how can I test this? And I hope I can be the tester for our
Yeah,
company.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So that actually, luckily that worked, and I could be the better tester for DBT.
And when you saw those features, you said, I thought it was pretty cool. What about it? Like, give me some specifics of the features that were particularly compelling to you.
Well, I think first of all, it was that I cannot do everything I was missing in VS Code
Yeah,
directly in
yeah,
VS Code. So I do not need to jump anymore between my IDE for which I use for all my other tasks and DBT Cloud. So I cannot do everything directly in VS Code. Like all the features are there. And for me, that is just a massive time saver. So I'm
yeah.
super happy with that. And then on top of that, I think the first feature that jumped at my eye was the live error detection.
Hmm.
I think that was like the one which I saw and I was like, oh, I think this could save a lot of people a lot of time. Yeah, so I think that was definitely the feature that stood out most for me.
Awesome. And now you have been using Fusion for a few months since then. Can you describe your experience? Did my demo and the stuff that I promised, did it deliver, right?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm still as happy with it as I was when I first saw it, so that's good. Um,
Nice.
I could also test it for some bigger tasks and for some smaller tasks. So we recently redesigned our schema. So I could refactor a table and I also could create two new tables with it. And there, as I said, like the live error detection was super helpful because, normally I write code, then I run dbt build, I see, are there any errors? Because errors can happen, you can just make a small typo. And then, yeah, I would repeat that process until there wouldn't be any errors anymore. And then I would create my pull requests. Well, now I just, see this directly and I just see it in the little problem section in
Yeah, yeah.
code. And yeah, I cannot overlook it. I can just directly update it. And I'm sure if I, like create my pull request, the build will definitely run. So that was
Mm.
definitely like super helpful. And now thinking about it, I think secondly, like the column linear function, that is also super helpful.
Yeah, the
So
column level lineage. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, because I also explain like a lot of our code like to my colleagues and like it's just super helpful for a specific column to actually show where does it come from. And I think especially in combination with the go to reference function that really, really helps.
Yeah.
Makes it quite intuitive. And I think it really speeds up people to use the repo. And it also helps
Mm.
it to make, like to really show where all your columns come from. And it just makes everything much faster and much, much clearer.
And so you're describing that scenario, you're bringing someone and you're saying, hey, I'm trying to educate them on what this model does, right? You
Exactly.
bring up the column level lineage visualization that's available during development in VS Code, right?
Yeah,
And then you can even do like command click to go to where that column is coming from and show them, hey, look, this is coming from this model. And it's that sort of interactive exploration that makes actually
exactly.
explaining the
Yeah.
data model much simpler. Yeah.
Yeah, I just did it last week with a colleague, and that was just super helpful. And I also do it when I look into repos of other people where I maybe have to use a column in my own model and I want to see where does that column come from.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
do have a lineage tool, so, but it does not show you when a column actually has been transformed or renamed.
Yeah.
So
During development, like as you make the
exactly.
changes, you can see how they update in that lineage visualization, right?
Yeah, so I find that is really, really cool. And then thinking of it, yeah, also for really small tasks, like tasks that just happen sometimes. So we had a breaking change and we had to rename a column.
Yeah.
And so my colleague renamed the column and forgot to update it in the downstream model. So then the build failed and then, like he had to make a change again. You would think that's not a lot of time because say, oh, it's just 5-10 minutes. But that really sums up. And with the refactor column, I just, I click on it and under 1 minute, everything is done for me. I make the pull request and it works. So those kind of small things, they really sum up. So it really saves me a lot of time.
That's fantastic to hear. Yeah, and so I mean, this kind of is a similar workflow to when you did those schema refactors, right? You explained in your first example, where like you're changing these models that are probably far upstream, and you're constantly getting feedback on what about the rest of your project needs to be updated in order for them to run, right? Yeah, that's super, super powerful. I remember I was a full stack developer for some time. So I worked a lot with JavaScript, right? And then at some point I actually switched to TypeScript. And maybe this analogy doesn't resonate for the data practitioners in the audience, but I had that same moment where I was like, I can make a change here, and everything else but my project suddenly lights up red if it breaks something way over there, And so you don't have to keep that mental load in memory,
Absolutely. And you could argue, oh, just run dbt build. But if it's just a small change, sometimes you just forget, or you're like, oh, it's not needed.
And it's
dbt
expensive,
build.
right?
And see if it
Yeah.
breaks. So, and also it will only first show you one reason why it breaks, but maybe there's several reasons why it could break. So
Makes sense. And so I'm curious, now that you've had this experience, it seems to be going well. What do you describe, or how do you describe Fusion to your peers, right? What do you tell them about why they should adopt it and why they should use it as the new standard engine?
well, I would say it's definitely a must try for everyone who uses VS Code. Because it makes your life much easier. It brings all the functions, as I said before, that are missing in VS Code in there from dbt Cloud. So for me I would say it saves a lot of time. It saves a lot of frustration. Because when you look at a pull request and you made a small mistake and then it broke, or you looked at the pull request from your peer and the same thing. So I would say because of that, it also improves collaboration, I would say, with other team members, because you don't have this constant back and forth, because small errors happen less and less. So it saves you time, it makes you more efficient, it helps you to work better with your peers. And I think it also brings much more awareness about the project to you, just because you really see how everything is intertwined and how it's linked, not only on general model, but also on column level. I think especially when you're new in a team, that can be really, really valuable.
Got it. Yeah. So you feel very incentivized to get your whole team on Fusion so that those collaboration benefits improve, and also so that you can onboard new team members to work on the DBT project more efficiently. Is that right?
Yeah, I would definitely think that's fantastic.
Cool. And maybe last question. So all of these developer experience improvements are great, and it's very clear that like they make an impact on your day-to-day life as a developer. But a lot of people want to know, how does this actually impact the business, right? What does this, why does it matter? Okay, great. Like you got a new fun tool as a developer and you're happier, but how does this translate into like the business should say, oh yeah, this is a good thing?
That is actually a very good question. Let me think.
It's a question that I think about all the time as a product manager for this. So yeah,
it's a good
I get you.
question. Well, I would say, I assume, let's put it like that. I assume a lot of business stakeholders think more in efficiency and in time.
Yeah.
So everything we said before actually leads to, as we already said, more efficiency, but that also means that models are potentially ready much faster.
Yeah.
Gives them the insights faster so they can act faster. So in the end, that time saving on developer side translates also to time saving on business stakeholder side. And yeah, so I think that I would definitely name as the most important aspect, because everyone cares about time.
Yeah. So yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Secondly, I would also say you maybe it increases trust in the data because, a lot has been checked.
Yeah.
Even though, you would see it already in the pull request, maybe that concept is a bit too abstract for business stakeholders.
Mm-hmm.
So I can imagine if you tell them that you're able to see errors directly, that calms the mind and increases trust in data.
Yeah, and so it sounds like it's trust and efficiency largely, right? And the time to insights when they make a request, hey, I would love to understand this metric. I'd love to get this analysis, right? You guys can deliver that more efficiently with a developer experience. I completely agree with this. And then it's actually that when you make those changes, uh, they can trust the output, right? They can trust that the data they're seeing is more correct because of things like impact analysis, right? When you make a change, hey, this is exactly how it impacts everything
Exactly.
downstream,
Yeah.
and we're not going to introduce anything breaking or anything that could modify the data significantly in a negative way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, this was so much fun. Thank you so much, Sonia. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. And thank you, everybody here watching right now. I hope you get a real sense for Fusion. And Sonia's awesome, and she's been using Fusion for months. She's been such an awesome partner. Thank you for your feedback, Sonia. The engine would not be where it is today without folks like you.
Well,
And
I can only give this back. You guys were so responsive. Every time we had a question or we saw something that maybe didn't work 100%, you jumped on it directly and you did not only fix it, you made it better.
thank
So
you.
yeah, very, very positive experience.
That is our goal. Yeah, that's kind of our mission. And it's valuable for us too, right? To get that feedback. Folks, all right, let's do it. I'm going to pass it back to Leah for some next steps. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Elias and Sonia. Alrighty, thanks everyone for joining. Here's some next steps for you. So you can get started with the DBT Fusion engine. Just click that Talk to an Expert button here at the top of Goalcast, and our team will be in touch. You can also click that button if you'd like to get a DBT platform demo, talk to an expert about your specific use case, get your questions answered. You can also click that button. And then I hope that y'all can join us for our next webinar in this series. So it's going to be on optimizing costs through state-aware orchestration. So we'll drop a link in the chat for you to register for that event. And I hope that we see you in early December. And then lastly, we are launching a survey about today's webinar. Please take that survey for us. We'd love to get your thoughts on how to improve these sessions for y'all in the future. But thank you so much for joining us today. I hope everyone has a great rest of your day and a happy Halloween. Okay, thanks. Bye.